Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to another episode of the Democracy Exchange with The Depot, our one-stop station where we engage in conversations to foster civic understanding and have meaningful discussions. Today, our guest is Dr. Katie Stygles. She is BGSU's campus expert about compliance and will tell us all about all the changes that have happened to BGSU because of SB1 and how we are acting in accordance with the law. Thank you, Dr. Katie Stygles, for being here today.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me.
I would like to start the interview by asking for an overview of SB1, especially for listeners who may not be familiar with it. I know there are a lot of misconceptions in regard to the law, so if you could tell us in your own words, as the compliance officer, what is the Advanced Ohio Higher Education Act, also known as SB1?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are definitely a lot of misconceptions. I think it's helpful to start by grounding it in the context, right? So for the last several years, we've really seen an increase in distrust for a lot of systems within the U.S., but especially around higher ed and what is the value, what is the product that our students are really receiving in the end. So that growing distrust sets the stage for what was initially introduced as SB 83 back in March of 2023. So this has been quite some time in the making. It was reintroduced as Senate Bill 1 in January of this year, 2025. Then signed by the governor March 28th and went into effect June 27th. So really, it's broad, reaches far across the institutions of public higher education in the state of Ohio. I would say some of the real kind of touch points of SB1 are the protection of intellectual diversity and then certainly the prohibitions of DEI in offices, programming, positions. It really creates additional layers of oversight, right? So regulation and reporting through a broad spectrum of work that institutions of higher ed do. So we have taken the opportunity to really affirm our commitment as an institution to academic freedom and leaned in on this equality of opportunity that is so central to SB1 and is absolutely important to BGSU and long has been. We were pretty well positioned for some of these changes because of our commitment to federal and state non-discrimination laws like Title IX, Title VI, Title VII, right? So that work was already happening, and it continues with the new Office of State and Federal Compliance and Non-Discrimination. So they've picked up some of this, and then certainly in my role as Chief State and Federal Compliance Officer, that's the point of what it is that we're doing here together. So again, we've always been a campus committed to the free exchange of ideas. And so really, as a public institution for the public good, I love that saying about BGSU. It's remembering that institutions of higher education, particularly public institutions of higher education in the United States, have an obligation to ensure that as many people as possible have access to higher education and the opportunities that higher education can create in people's lives. So we can still do all of that important work within the new context that SB1 has, offered to us through this law. So again, remembering it's important that we do that free exchange of ideas, but that doesn't mean that we just have free reign for harassment and discrimination, right? So that's part of the emphasis of this compliance work. So I have the opportunity in this role to work with really everyone across campus, because compliance is everyone's job, part of it at least. So I get to work with a lot of different people to make sure that we continue to treat everyone at BGSU as an individual and hold folks to equal standards, and then make sure that we're providing everyone with that equality of opportunity.
Awesome. When SB1 was signed into law, BGSU did not announce any new university changes for compliance until a few weeks before the school year, even when other universities in Ohio were making changes to their diversity, equity, and inclusion offices in advance to the bill's passage. What approach did BGSU take, preparing for compliance and announcements of new changes?
Yeah, so at BGSU, I think it was most important for us to avoid early compliance and over compliance. We certainly saw, and I'm not trying to throw shade at any other institutions in the state, but we certainly saw some people who made changes pretty early on after the introduction of the bill, and some of those changes may have wound up to be arguably perhaps not necessary under the bill as passed. So it was really important to us to continue to benefit our students and cause the least disruption as possible. So not making changes that we would then have to roll back on was really the focus. So we waited for the bill's passage, for the Ohio Department of Higher Education to release some of their guidance around how to carry this work out. How are we going to monitor compliance? Spoke with our peers, sought the advice of the Attorney General, and worked with all the various constituents across campus to make sure that we were hearing voices, taking that feedback in, and measuring our response, being compliant, but still maintaining who it is that BGSU has become, right? We didn't want to lose the essence of our work, and our people are central to us here at BGSU. So I think that's why that avoidance of early or over compliance was most important.
What is the process of compliancy working with the State House, and how is BGSU still working to comply to the law today?
Sure. Yeah. So because there are so many different dates for implementation or for various things to be turned into the Ohio Department of Higher Education, things like we are still under a collective bargaining agreement here at BGSU with the faculty. And so depending on a state institution's expiration of their CBA, they may have to comply with some of the necessary policy changes before another institution whose CBA doesn't expire until a bit later. So we waited for that guidance from the ODHE, from the chancellor. They have created a website with dates for the various deliverables that they're expecting that are required by the law. And as a result, we've been able to create some similar resources here for our BGSU community. So we link to an FAQ page where, we are answering and still taking in questions that folks may have about SB1, and able to point to some of those resources that have been made available to us by the state.
Awesome. That leads me to questions about the current state of compliance now that we are in the school year and acting according to the law. Before the university changes, and during the beginning of them, a lot of students were fearful that the bill would take away their favorite resources and opportunities on campus. I personally remember when the Women and Gender Equity Lounge, which I frequented a lot last year, had to shut down their Instagram page, and actions like that definitely sparked some confusion and some panic. To listeners who may not know what changes were made, could you explain them and tell us if students are still able to access the resources they had last year and the years prior.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I really want to acknowledge first that kind of panic and confusion is normal, right? I think, there was amongst staff and faculty very similar feelings of fear and wondering, what's going to happen to my favorite employee or my favorite office or those sorts of things. So if people were feeling that, they were certainly not alone. And I think some of the media coverage through various papers and things might have contributed to some of that confusion. I remember seeing an article that said that controversial topics couldn't be covered, and that's kind of a misinterpretation, right? And I know one of your later questions will give us the opportunity to dive into that a little bit more, so I'll save some of that. But here at BGSU, all of the resources and services that are still allowable within the context of SB1 and other state and federal laws and regulations have been maintained.
Good. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
That was really awesome.
Really important. And again, like I said earlier, our people are central to our mission. All of the people from the Division of Inclusion and Belonging that no longer exists as that standalone division and, those specific positions, all of the people are still here. So we took the opportunity.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
That's not something to just sneeze at. That is wonderful.
Absolutely. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Yeah. And so we took the opportunity to really look at those position descriptions, look at the strengths of the people who held those roles and the passions that they were living out in their daily roles, and reorganize, and we used the term redeploy those staff in positions that were as closely aligned as was allowable by SB1. So you brought up the lounge for the CWGE, which was an iconic spot on campus. I hope you have one of the stickers.
I do. It's on my laptop.
Yes.
I am never going to take it off.
Yes, that is a treasure. It will someday be vintage, right? People will be paying big money for that kind of stuff. So
I still have my sunglasses from the Division of Diversity and Equity.
The
Inclusion.
You Belong.
Yes.
Yeah, I have mine too. Yeah. So the CWGE was doing such awesome work. All of the work that is still allowable is still happening. So the green dot, the interpersonal violence prevention and education, we took the opportunity to look and see where would this work best fit within the structure that we have. We don't have a traditional student affairs division that is so common in higher education, because we really wanted to have some laser focus on student engagement and success and what's now community and well-being, in addition to what was then inclusion and belonging. So Casey and Corey from the CWGE are now in the Office of the Dean of Students, and the focuses of that work that, again, are still legal, they are able to incorporate in their positions, and it allowed us to expand the work of the Office of the Dean of Students beyond the conduct and the care and support focuses that they previously had. They've added a third focus area around interpersonal relationships.
That's great.
So, similarly, we had an opportunity to really strengthen some of the student services that are offered here at BGSU, specifically calling out our Firelands Pathway program and then our Deciding Students program. And so staff members were, again, redeployed into those programs, and that gives us focus and resources that weren't previously there. We're able to really bolster those programs because of this reorganization. So I know some people are still wondering, like, where is, this person, or where is this service? And that's understandable. Because those people are all still here, folks could simply reach out to that person that they used to go to for those services, or they can always contact the Office of the Dean of Students, the Division of Community and Wellbeing, or the Division of Student Engagement and Success, and the staff within will be able to direct folks wherever it is that they're looking for that resource.
I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's very heartwarming to think about how BGSU has, grappled with something that could have been really a much different impact on our campus. Yeah.
Yes. As well as our favorite resources potentially going away as a fear, when that misconception in the news and all of these fears of what they're going to take away, it included controversial topics in the classrooms, like you mentioned earlier. And some students had the expectation that whole classes would be cut and they wouldn't be able to take classes that they need for their major in order to graduate. It was a legit fear I've heard as a student, just in and around my campus. And so when we came into the fall, not knowing a lot about the changes, many students have noticed that those controversial classes continued, even despite those rumors that they wouldn't be able to. So how does the university stay in compliance while controversial discussions are still open in many of our university classrooms?
Yeah. So SB1 doesn't actually say that we can't teach about or discuss controversial topics. What it says is that the institution can't take a position on either endorsing or opposing controversial beliefs. So the academic freedom and the higher education and the expertise that comes along with the academic preparation that faculty go through, those things are maintained, right? So it's still crucial that people are able to learn about various topics that some might deem a controversial belief, right? And so I think one of the things that really confuses folks is, if somebody's teaching a women's gender and sexuality studies course, they can't avoid some of the things that have been deemed controversial topics, right? But they are acting in their role as faculty in a way that we trust them to do and have trusted them longer than SB1 has been around, right? They're acting from their academic expertise, and they are helping to teach BGSU students how to think and how to come to their own conclusions about various topics, including those controversial topics. They're not going to say, this controversial belief is what you must believe, right?
Yes.
So somebody should be getting a grade because of their ability to make an argument, supporting what it is that they are writing or discussing in that class. Not, this is what my faculty member believes about such and such topic, and so since I wrote similarly, I'm going to get an A. Right?
Yes.
It's really about that critical thinking.
Yes.
And that is what's most important.
And as somebody in my 5th semester at BGSU, I can testify that those classes that have you really think some more about what's going on in this world, and being a peace and conflict studies minor, I have taken quite a few hard classes about different parts of this world that are less pleasant to learn about.
Yeah.
They are always the most rewarding courses.
Yeah. And
They're
they stretch
always
your
the most
brain,
rewarding.
right?
Yes.
Have you thinking about things that maybe you haven't even pondered before.
Yes.
And then give you that opportunity to take that information and measure it against your prior experiences and what you're anticipating for your future, and what is it that Anna really believes about this, and how can you incorporate what you've learned into your daily life and into your future career.
It's very much opened my mind up.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad students are still able to have that, and that this bill did not stop it, like many people feared.
Yeah.
Another fear students had was scholarships. There is a part of the law that impacts which scholarships can be distributed and why. And my question is, how has BGSU adjusted scholarships that serves the students they were meant to serve while still remaining compliant to the law?
Yeah. So because of the Harvard SCOTUS decision, we were in a pretty good position for these requirements around scholarships already, because we had to take a look at every scholarship at that point and determine whether they were following that law, right? So we were already reviewing with the eye toward compliance, and this was additional steps within that. I think there's a couple things that it's important to call out. This talks about not awarding existing scholarships or starting new scholarships that are really focused on DEI or that might be identity specific for some of those protected classes that are called out specifically in SB1. So we did make some adjustments. So there might have been previously an award that had always gone to someone in a specific major of a specific race. Well, under these requirements, as well as the SCOTUS decision, we took the opportunity to talk with the donors who maybe established those scholarship funds, and find out from them, what are the ways that we might be able to get to the students that you want to see have this opportunity for success in this field. Are you looking to ensure that someone who hasn't previously been able to overcome some of these challenges in their lives, somebody who's talked about how it is that they have been able to get around or, run right through various barriers in their lives. And so just really helping donors kind of hone in on those things. I do want to note, it's really important that people understand that SB1 doesn't impact state or federal financial aid. So
Yes,
those remain untouched under SB1. There are still scholarships that students can find that are identity specific or, specific to various experiences that folks have had maybe growing up or because of particular interests they have. And they would be able to receive those external scholarships and apply them here at BGSU, right? So our financial aid has done a lot of work. It has not been an easy year or 2 or 3 for them. But hopefully our students are feeling like they have a good understanding, those who had already a scholarship, of their ability to maintain that or not. And if there are students who are still confused about that, I would encourage them to reach out to the staff in financial aid, because they'll be able to help on an individual basis based on whatever particular scholarship that might have been.
Perfect. Similarly, how does this apply to students who are in student organizations that are rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion? How does the law affect their futures?
Yeah, so SB1 has a specific carve-out for student organizations, and actually disability services work in the same amendment. So it doesn't prohibit the existence or establishment of various student groups at Ohio public higher ed institutions. the identity-based groups and the programming that they provide to our campus, those will still continue as long as they do so under a rule that was already in existence at BGSU. All of our student orgs have to be open. There are some exceptions where something might be for a particular major or for a shared interest. But, you know, one of the things that I have said over and over and over to help people who maybe misunderstood what some of these groups are and do, I've told a lot of people about like the Latino Student Union. Mm-hmm. Their catchphrase, their tagline is not Latino, not a problem. The Latino Student Union is inviting everyone of all identities into their space, their membership, their programming, to learn about the culture, to contribute to the inclusion of Latino AX people, right? So I think that is where some of the confusion and misconception from outside has happened.
Nice. I'm glad that they're still able to keep going.
Yes.
And it was pretty clear when we came back onto campus that nothing had changed regarding that.
Yeah, our
And
student
so we
orgs are
still
definitely
thriving.
still thriving.
And they are thriving.
Yeah.
And I love that it's open to all students. That is
Yes.
something to celebrate.
Yes.
Because why limit anyone from learning more?
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite things that President Rogers said in one of the emails about the changes was that we have long been defined by those we include, not those we exclude.
Yes.
So thinking really about who are we bringing to the table? Who are we bringing to these opportunities for really changing lives for the better?
Great. Thank you. Next, I want to turn the questions over to the future of the law on higher education in Ohio. The bill establishes a chancellor of higher education and determines the functions of university trustee boards. In upcoming years of public university administration, what lasting impacts do you believe the law will have on our institutions?
Yeah, so the relationship between the state and our boards of trustees have always existed. Our governor appoints our board members, and they do have that relationship with the chancellor and the Ohio Department of Higher Education. What SB1 has done is introduce some new requirements for them around training, what it is particularly that they should be focused on in terms of oversight and moving forward in our strategic plans. So I think really that is in an effort to help ensure that the people who are making those at the top decisions are familiar with the priorities for higher education in our state as set by our legislators.
Awesome. And then I know the bill also discusses rules for faculty, including preventing them from collective bargaining, which you kind of touched on earlier. Would you explain what the requirements for faculty now are?
There are a lot of different requirements for faculty, from everything from some new questions that have to be asked on all the student evaluations at the end of a course, to posting their syllabi online within 3 clicks of the main site, and those need to be searchable by keyword, and they have specific criteria that have to be included. With regard to the collective bargaining, there are a few topics that we are prohibited as an institution from engaging in that collective bargaining process around, particularly tenure, post-tenure review, and retrenchment. But again, as an institution of higher education, it's really important that we don't lose sight of our shared governance. And that has always been the case and will continue to be the case. So while we won't collectively bargain on those topics, we'll still engage in our processes of shared governance by discussing with Faculty Senate, with our faculty union, those topics. And, we already have material about those things that exist within the collective bargaining agreement. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to drastically change, right? So I think through that communicative shared governance process, we'll see what it is that will be in place after the CBA expires.
Okay. I have only 2 more questions left. These are my final questions. Is there any important information for students to know that we have not talked about yet?
I don't necessarily think so, but I think it's a good opportunity to plug, again, the FAQ page, and then reaching out. If people have questions, if there's a student group that wants somebody to come in and talk about SB1, if there's a classroom or faculty group, reach out to compliance@bgsu.edu or to one of our staff members specifically. This is about education, so we have to be open to those questions, and maybe there are resources that need to be developed yet. And so having folks tell us, hey, we could use a little better understanding around this particular topic or area within the bill or other aspects of state and federal compliance too. So our ability to communicate about those questions is really important so that we can make sure everybody has the resources that they need to be successful here.
That actually was my last question as well. Where should students reach out to if they have more questions? So will you please repeat the website page and the specific place and people?
Yeah, absolutely. So people can go to the Office of State and Federal Compliance and Non-Discrimination page, or reach out by email to compliance@bgsu.edu. Or any of the staff individually, and we'll always make sure that questions get to the right spot.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to talk about this, and it's very enlightening and very relieving to hear a lot of these answers.
Yeah, good. That's what we hope. It's through that conversation and through being able to kind of peel back some of the layers of confusion and misconception that we can continue to move forward as the community that we are and always have been.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have for today. We'd like to thank Dr. Katie Stygles for joining us and offering her insight. Thank you to the Depot social media and podcast team, Bryn Drabeck, Julia Amlin, and Thomas Williamson. And special thanks to Falcon Radio and Professor Robert Alexander, our founder. I've been your host and researcher, Anna McRae. Make sure to join us next time at the Democracy Exchange. Bye for now. Thank you to everybody for listening. To find the video version of this podcast, you can find us on our YouTube page at BGSU Depot. If you'd like to keep up with what we're doing, make sure to follow our Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at BGSU_Depot. As a reminder to all of our listeners, November 4th is this year's election day. So please go out, get your vote in, and make a difference.